Hey there, theology students. If you are currently staring down a massive final exam on Christian doctrines and feeling, well, honestly a little overwhelmed by all the dense historical debates, you are in the exact right place. This explainer is built to be your ultimate, highly structured study guide. We're going to completely master the complex, centuries-old theological debates surrounding the Eucharist, and we'll break down the biggest, heaviest concepts into clear, bite-sized pieces. So grab your notebooks, get focused, and let's conquer this material together.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our agenda. We'll start with the origins of the Eucharist, move through Roman Catholic theories and Protestant approaches, and then compare them head-to-head. Finally, we'll examine theory versus practice and wrap the whole thing up with a final study guide.
Section 1. Origins of the Eucharist. So, before we jump into any of the really heavy debates, we need to remember that the foundation of all of this is right there in the name. Eucharist is simply the Greek word for Thanksgiving. It's also commonly referred to as Holy Communion, Mass, or the Lord's Supper, totally depending on the tradition. Looking at the history, it's wild to notice how many centuries separate the foundational event, the Last Supper in the 1st century, from the massive fractures of the Protestant Reformation in the 15th and 16th centuries. And this debate didn't just stop, it continues right up into the modern era, with Pope Paul VI officially addressing these theories as recently as 1965. Understanding this timeline is absolutely crucial because it shows us that the theological understanding of the Eucharist isn't just static, it's something that has been actively, passionately wrestled with for 2 millennia.
And you know, all of that wrestling, all of those centuries of intense debate, they stem directly from these exact words. According to the Gospel of Matthew, aware of his approaching death, Jesus shared ordinary bread and wine with his disciples, stating, "This is my body, this is my blood." It sounds super simple, right? But these exact words sparked an endless theological debate regarding the real presence of Christ. Did he mean it literally, symbolically, maybe spiritually? Well, let's look at how different traditions answered that very question.
Section 2. Roman Catholic Eucharistic Theories.
All right, for your exam, you need to get ready for what we are going to call the 3 big Catholic T's. The first T is transubstantiation. This is the traditional heavyweight of Catholic doctrine championed by massive thinkers like Thomas Aquinas. It defines a miraculous change where the elements of communion become the actual, literal body and blood of Christ, even while they keep the physical appearances of bread and wine. To wrap your head around this concept of changing substance, think of water turning into ice. While water and ice might look and feel entirely different, their core underlying substance, H2O, remains exactly the same. Transubstantiation basically argues a miraculous inverse of this concept. The outward physical appearance stays exactly the same. It still looks and tastes like bread and wine, but the core, fundamental substance is entirely transformed into Christ.
To show just how vital this concept really is, take a look at this quote from Pope Paul VI in his 1965 encyclical, Mysterium Fidei. He states super clearly that the words spoken over the Eucharist have literally changed it into flesh and blood. This firmly demonstrates the traditional stance of the Catholic Church, specifically pushing back hard against any modern reinterpretations that try to soften this miraculous, literal change.
Which leads us directly to our second T, transignification. Put forward by Edward Schilleweeks, this is more of a modern minority view. It argues that the meaning or significance of the bread and wine is changed. Think of a regular plain gold ring. If you just buy it at a store, you know, it's just jewelry. But the exact moment you use it in a wedding ceremony to exchange vows, it becomes a wedding ring. The physical item hasn't mutated at all, but its deep fundamental significance has completely changed. That is transignification. The elements signify a higher value than just mere bodily food.
And our third T is transfinalization, a theory from the theologian Karl Rahner. This view states that the purpose or finality of the bread and wine is changed. Let's use another analogy here. Imagine an old empty storage warehouse that a community renovates and turns into a vibrant family home. The physical bricks and beams, they're the exact same, but the ultimate purpose of the building has entirely changed from storage to shelter. Similarly, Rahner argued the purpose of the bread and wine shifts to serve a totally new sacred function, arousing the faith of the people. Now, a very important pro tip for your exam right here. Pope Paul VI officially condemned both transignification and transfinalization if they were used to deny the actual substantial change of transubstantiation.
Section 3. Protestant approaches to communion. Now, let's shift gears entirely and travel back to the 16th century. The Protestant reformers fiercely challenged the Catholic views we just discussed, which led to their own distinct theologies. First up is consubstantiation. Notice the prefix con. While trans means across or change, con literally means with. Consubstantiation teaches that the bread and wine do not fundamentally change into flesh and blood.
Instead, Christ is spiritually present with them, in them, and under them. Basically, the bread coexists with his body. Now, a little bit of nuance for your test. While this idea is heavily linked to Martin Luther, he actually preferred to call it a sacramental union and rejected the exact term consubstantiation.
Moving even further away from the Catholic view, we have memorialism, famously championed by Ulrich Zwingli. Now, Zwingli completely denied the real presence of Christ in the sacrament. For him, the elements are purely symbolic representations. Zwingli focused strictly on Luke chapter 22, verse 19, where Jesus says, "Do this in remembrance of me." Therefore, the Eucharist is simply a commemorative ceremony. Jesus is only present in the room to the exact degree that the individual believer vividly brings him to mind through memory.
Finally, we have virtualism, driven by John Calvin. Calvin argued something very specific. Because Christ's physical body literally ascended into heaven, it cannot physically be in the bread and wine here on earth. However, he didn't deny Christ's presence altogether. He argued that Christ's unique spiritual power is present. But there is a catch based on Calvin's core theology. This spiritual power is received only by the elect, those whom God has already predestined for salvation. Because of this laser focus on who actually receives the power, virtualism is also widely known as receptionism.
Section 4. Comparing the theologies.
Honestly, if you only remember one thing from this explainer for your exam, let it be this comparison. It brilliantly illustrates the distinct boundaries of Protestant thought. You've got consubstantiation, driven by 16th century reformers, asserting that Christ coexists with the elements. Then there's memorialism, led by Zwingli, arguing it's a purely symbolic remembrance. And virtualism is Calvin's view that a spiritual power is received, but only by the elect. Memorize this matrix, and you'll easily be able to contrast these views on test day.
Section 5. Theory versus worship practice.
Okay, let's pull back from the textbooks for a second and look at reality. It's time to ask how these incredibly nuanced abstract theories actually look when you're just sitting in modern church pews. On one hand, we have strict theological theory, these really high-stakes debates over miraculous transubstantiation versus purely symbolic memorialism. People have historically been fiercely divided over exactly how Christ is present. But then, on the other hand, we have shared practice. No matter the denomination, you have people physically breaking bread, drinking wine, and taking a moment to remember Jesus. I really want you to consider, is an everyday worshiper's practice entirely based on knowing the strict theoretical beliefs of their denomination?
Because when you look at the evidence, there is massive common ground. Despite deep dogmatic differences on paper, you can walk into almost any Christian tradition and see these unifying practices happening. They are universally giving thanks and remembering Jesus. They are universally doing a physical reenactment of the Last Supper. They view it as fellowship, a communion with each other and God, a symbolic reminder of love, and a source of grace. The theory might fiercely divide them, but the physical, reverent rhythm of the worship practically unites them.
Section 6. Final Exam Study Guide. All right, we have covered a ton of ground, and it is time to bring it all home. Think of me as your enthusiastic professor officially handing over the ultimate cheat sheet. Lock these into your memory right now. Know your 3 T's for the Catholic side. Transubstantiation means the substance changes. Transignification means the meaning changes. Transfinalization means the purpose changes. For the Protestant views, remember, consubstantiation means Christ coexists. Memorialism means it is entirely symbolic. Virtualism means a spiritual power goes to the elect. Your core essay debate will likely center on the real, physical presence versus a spiritual or symbolic presence. And hey, you can score major points by pointing out the common ground found in their shared practical worship rituals.
To wrap things up, I want to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought, one that would make an absolutely incredible thesis statement for your final paper. Does theological theory divide Christians more than actual worship practice unites them? It is such a fascinating balance between strict dogma and shared human worship. Keep that question in mind as you review your notes. Best of luck on your exams, theology students. You are going to do incredibly well. Keep studying, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.